Hey everyone, today I'm sharing a story I came across on Reddit. It's not a made-up creepypasta. It's someone's real-life experience. And honestly, it's disturbing. Whether it's true or not, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But it really stuck with me.
If you like real horror stories like this, feel free to hit subscribe, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments what you think about it.
All right, let's get into it.
My first memory isn't of a birthday, or my first steps, or my grandmother's smile. My first memory is of a dead man. I must have been 4. The world was still a giant, blurry place, and on this day it was wrapped in thick, swirling rolls of morning fog. The air was damp and smelled of pine and wet earth. I remember looking up through a gap in the mist and seeing him. He was suspended between 2 ancient pine trees, strung up by a dozen shimmering silver ropes, like a fly caught in a web spun by a god. Blood dark and glistening dripped from him, painting the ferns below in a grim crimson. His face was a frozen mask of shock and abject horror. But beneath it all, clearer than anything else, was the unmistakable stillness of death. Years later, the memory surfaced, unbidden, on a quiet afternoon. I asked my grandmother about it, expecting her to dismiss it as a nightmare. She just looked out the window, her gaze lost in the trees. "Sometimes the forest gives," she said, with a slow, weary shrug. "And sometimes it eats." At the time, I assumed she was speaking metaphorically, that the woods could conjure our deepest fears, that my mind had twisted a shadow into a monster, a simple misremembering. I now know that isn't what she meant. Not at all. I live in a small cabin nestled deep within the forest. The Deepwoods, that's the only name Gran has ever used for it. I'm old enough now to suspect there's a proper name on some map somewhere, but she's never offered it, and I've learned not to press. It's always been just the 2 of us. No holiday visits from cousins, no friends dropping by, no parents, not even a photograph or a story. I might have spun a fantasy that I was a kidnapped princess, hidden away from the world, if it weren't for the undeniable proof of our connection. We share the same crooked nose, skewed at the exact same angle. We both sneeze without fail, in a sudden burst of strong sunlight. And besides, if I were some stolen child, escape would be the least of my worries. I'm not a prisoner. I go into town twice a week for lessons with the other local children, usually just Hollis and Jackson, but Nara too when her father is in a good mood. We have a computer with a spotty internet connection in our reading nook. I have free reign to roam the endless expanse of the Deepwoods whenever I please. As long as I follow the superstitions. At least, that's what I've always called them. Stomp at each end of a bridge 3 times whenever you cross one. Leave a saucer of milk on the front porch every summer and winter solstice. Crush soonberries under your heel before their skin can ripen to a deep purple. Never leave a photograph in view of an open window. Always lock the door before the sun sets, but always unlock it before it rises. To her, these aren't superstitions, they're laws. As fundamental and unchangeable as gravity or the speed of light. They are simply the way of life. But to me, a rule has always needed a consequence. It needs a point. When I was young, the distinction was meaningless. A child accepts the world as it is. Rain is just rain. Long before you learn about the water cycle, things simply are. It's only when you grow tall enough to reach the top shelf that you start to ask what's stored up there. And slowly, my world began to cleave in 2. There were rules and there were superstitions. Keep your hands away from the hot stove. That was a rule. The consequence was immediate, painful, and obvious. Walk a perfect circle around the cabin 10 times before bed every night. That was a superstition. Even now, some things blur the line. Don't get me wrong, my Gran is wonderful. She feeds me, she sings me to sleep with old, forgotten lullabies, and she's taught me how to tell a harmless thistle sprig from the deadly bite of a viper nettle. I couldn't have asked for a better guardian. But there are still pieces of my childhood that feel like a puzzle with missing parts. Never, ever be caught in the hail, she told me once, her voice low and serious. Yet I have vivid, warm memories of sitting on her lap, watching ice pellets rattle against the window pane. And the moment the hail turned to rain, we would rush outside, our breath fogging in the cold air, and gather the frozen chunks by the handful. What Gran did with the buckets of dirty ice we collected, I never figured out. And then there was the yarning. Whenever my clothes grew too tattered or my sleeves ripped, Gran would spend hours carefully unspooling the entire outfit. We'd take the basket of threads out to the pine trees surrounding our home, dig shallow little furrows in the dirt, and wrap the threads around the base of the trunks. It became a game. I would run in giddy circles around the pines, my old sweaters and trousers finding a new home, until I'd fall to the mossy ground in a dizzy, giggling heap. Trees are fickle creatures, Gran would tell me as we filled in the holes to bury the threads. They need a shorter leash than most, or they forget who they're loyal to. Us? I'd ask. She'd offer a strange, distant smile. Number, not us. Why? What was the point of it all? Then there are the other, stranger things. Things I can't just brush off as quirky habits. Like the hiker in red. His arrival is a fixed point in our year, like a holiday. Every September 28th, without fail, we know to expect him. He stumbles out of the woods and up to our doorway, drenched in sweat, his t-shirt and shorts a faded, desperate red. Please, he always says, his voice raspy. I'm lost. And Gran always replies, come in. She gives him water and food and listens to his story. He'd been on a solo trip in the Sierras, lost the trail, ran out of food. He'd been wandering for, well, he could never quite remember. Days? A week? This is the Deepwoods, Gran will tell him, pointing him toward the village. Town is that way. He always thanks her and wanders off. And every year, he returns. One year, when Gran was out back fetching water, I finally asked him, what do you do in the time you aren't here? What do you do all year in the forest before you come back? Pardon? He asked, blinking. His head gave a sudden, sharp jerk. His eyes fluttered rapidly, like a computer, glitching, trying to restart. When he refocused on me, the usual scared desperation was gone. In its place was something new, something raw and primal, a bottomless, gnawing hunger. Here you are, Gran said, returning with a pitcher of water. He blinked, and the look vanished, replaced by the familiar, lost hiker. Maybe I imagined it, but for that one chilling second, it's always been like this. Superstitions without reason, oddities without explanation. Just Gran and me in our cabin until last week. I found a new void tree, I told Gran, bursting onto the porch. She looked up from the dream catcher she was weaving, a needle poised in one hand. A void tree? It's been years. Just past the stream, inside that dense thicket of elms. I never thought to look in the middle of it, but there it was. An almost feverish excitement lit up her face. She hurried to her room and returned with a spile and a bucket. Void trees. I've looked them up online, asked Hollis and the others. As far as I can tell, they don't exist outside the Deepwoods. They are tall, unsettling things, with bark the color of drying blood and leaves so black they seem to swallow the sunlight. I've never liked them, but Gran hunts for them on our walks. Why don't you just grow your own? I'd asked her once. She only shook her head, a shadow passing over her features. Void trees don't work like that. I led her through the gap in the elms to the clearing within. Sure enough, a void tree loomed over us. Gran wasted no time, drilling a hole in the trunk, hammering the spile in, and hanging the bucket. "Well done, Juniper," she told me, her hand on my shoulder. "The eyes of youth are worth 100 pairs like mine." That's another oddity, void tree sap. Gran harvests it year-round and stores it in jugs in our cellar. Every so often, a jug will disappear. When I ask where it goes, her lips just press into a thin, firm line. Once, I dipped my finger in a bucket and licked the sticky, bitter residue. She lectured me for an hour. "It's too valuable to be eaten," was all she'd say. For a week, that new tree was her entire world. She checked it daily, sometimes twice, lugging heavy buckets of sap back to boil and can. Then, on the 5th day, she didn't come home. Sunset came and went. The time for our nightly ritual of circling the cabin passed. This wasn't like her. Panic began to prickle at the back of my neck. I checked the stream, the valley overlook. Nothing. Just as I was about to sprint to town, I thought of the void tree. I found her unconscious at its base. Dried blood crusted her forehead, and a thick, broken branch lay beside her. It was horribly clear what had happened. "Gran! Gran! Wake up!" I shook her, but she was limp, unresponsive. I tried to lift her, but I've never been strong. Finally, hating myself for it, I left her there and ran. I sprinted the whole way to town, screaming for Dr. McKenty. Well after dark, they had her settled in the small building the town calls a hospital. She was groggy, but coming to. I sat by her bed until she finally focused on my face. "Juniper," she whispered. "Hi, Gran. How are you feeling?" "My head aches," she said, her hand finding mine. I remember checking the sap. A branch fell. They said, "You'll be all right." Her eyes shot wide. "The cabin," she rasped, her grip tightening. "Did we circle it? I can't remember." "There was no time, Gran. You were hurt." For once, couldn't she just let the rituals go? "Is it dark already?" She looked wildly for a window, and when she found one, a look of pure, primal terror washed over her face. I had never seen her look like that. "You have to go now, Juniper. Walk around the cabin 10 times and lock the door. You might still have time. Gran, I'm not leaving you. Nothing is going to happen. The Deepwood is our home. The Deepwood isn't our home," she interrupted, her voice a strained, desperate hiss. Her nails dug into my hand. "It's nothing but a stomach." She stared at me, her eyes pleading. "Go, please." So I went. It was for her own good, I told myself. She couldn't rest while she was so agitated. The forest at night has never scared me. It's my backyard. But tonight, the familiar trails felt alien. The shadows seemed to twist and writhe at the edge of my vision. When I reached the cabin, I almost went straight inside. It had been a long, draining day, but Gran would ask in the morning, and I've never been a good liar. Fine then, I would do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I walked the well-worn path around our home. Every bucket, every bush, a familiar landmark in the gloom. 5. A sharp snap echoed from the tree line. A deer, probably. Nothing unusual. 6. I paused. That sound, it wasn't just a sound, it was a silence that followed. The chirping of the crickets had stopped. I wasn't alone. 7. Something was wrong. There was a noise, a low, wet sound like breathing, but heavier, deeper than any animal I knew. I could feel it now, a predatory stillness in the foliage by the front of the house, its attention fixed solely on me. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. Only the wind answered. 8. My walk turned into a jog. I didn't dare use a light. That would only make me a better target. Sticks cracked under a heavy weight, not mine. The thing was moving, shadowing me. 9. One more lap. Just one more. I was close. I could almost feel the safety of the door. Then the steady crunching erupted into a full-blown charge. Heavy, pounding footfalls, shaking the very ground. It was sprinting for me. I abandoned the ritual, flung open the cabin door, and hurled myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. I hadn't finished. I hadn't made the 10th lap. Thump. Something colossal crashed against the door, the wood groaning under the impact. It scratched and clawed at the walls, splintering the timber. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled with the bolt and twisted it locked. The back door. Had I locked the back door? For a paralyzing second, I couldn't move, but the scratching at the front stopped, and I heard it, a heavy, skittering sound circling the house. It knew. I launched myself across the room and slammed the bolt on the back door just as the thing slammed into it from the other side. More pounding, more scratching. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the terrifying noise to a grandmother who couldn't hear me. "I should have believed you." The frantic assault grew louder. The hinges shuddered. The doorframe creaked, threatening to splinter and give way. This thing wanted in. It wanted me. It was going to crack. The sound was sharp, violent, and absolute, like a colossal whip cracking through the night air. And then, silence. Utter, profound silence. The thing was gone. I waited for what felt like an eternity, my back pressed against the door, but it never returned. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted into a fitful sleep. In the gray light before dawn, I woke. Part of me wanted to stay locked inside forever, but another of Gran's rules echoed in my head. Lock the door before sunset and unlock it before sunrise. I wasn't going to break another one. From the front, the Deepwoods looked just as they always had. But when I crept around to the back of the cabin, to where the thing had been when it went quiet, I saw him. His expression was one of shock and horror, but mainly of death. The hiker in red was strung up between 4 pine trees, suspended by dozens of threads in all colors. They weren't just wrapped around him, they had shot through him, piercing flesh and bone, pulling him taut. A single, vibrant, purple thread, one I recognized from an old childhood dress, passed directly through his forehead. A single bead of blood had dried there. I remembered the sound, that final echoing snap. The threads, our threads, the ones we had buried at the base of the trees for years. The trees remembering who they were loyal to, and as I looked closer, I saw it again, frozen forever on his dead face. Something besides surprise. It was the hunger, that aching, ravenous need to consume. For a long while, I just stared. Then I turned, went to the shed, and grabbed a bucket. It was time to check on the void tree. I live in a cabin in the forest. I used to say it was in the heart of the forest, but I know that isn't true now. This isn't the heart. This is the mouth. There are so many things my grandmother never explained. But when she comes home from the hospital, I'm going to ask her. I'll ask about the rules, the rituals, the hail, and the sap. But the first thing I plan to ask her is this. If the Deepwood is a stomach, what exactly is its food? And what are we feeding it?